Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. Time to get going once again. We're at midweek already. Seems like these weeks are flying by. And day 5 of the Department of Homeland Security shutdown that doesn't really seem to be affecting anyone because 90% of the workforce is reporting into work. Very often, they'll be forced to work without pay. But I guess that's par for the course under Trump. Whether in a Trump administration or in Trump private business, you can mostly expect to be working without pay, and that's what's going on. And, of course, a considerable amount of the funding that they're using to pay for operations, or if they're paying for them at all, were appropriated in what is now, I guess, more appropriately known as the Two Big Beautiful Bidets bill that is financing not only the Flying Love Palace for Corey Lewandowski and Kristi Noem, but ICE operations as well, and who knows what else. It's just a giant slush fund. And they're treating it appropriately, as slush funds go anyway. So, at any rate, yes, that probably accounts for the non-emergency feel of everything. The department is technically shut down. There's no appropriations bill in place for it, and both houses of Congress are on recess with no plans to come back early or anything like that. Maybe next week they'll come by and try to work on finding a solution to funding the department. But obviously the department doesn't need any solution, so you can see why I guess there's no feeling of urgency. It's a very interesting situation. We've never really been in one exactly like that before, where we were down to one department and that department had an enormous slush fund to work with, and it puts Republicans in an odd position for them to come back and say, well, you know, we're going to blame Democrats for this shutdown, but there's nothing shut down. All of the employees are working. Yes, they may be working without pay, and we don't feel good about that. But if you have, $75 billion slush fund that you're sitting on, well, then pay them if you feel bad about it. It's your slush fund. So they're really not sure what to do with this. And I mean, I guess that accounts for, I know it's not a good look when Chuck Schumer, asked about these things on TV, says, look, it just doesn't make any sense for it to go out any other way. The Republicans will come around to our position because there's no other position to take. But it makes him look like he's not, like he's not aware of who he's dealing with. Because ordinarily, as a default position, saying, okay, well, the Republicans will wake up and do the common sense thing is a losing proposition. And I think he's mostly aware of that. But as we were speaking about the other day, there are some times where, like, for instance, the use of the word abolish. It's not that abolish is always going to be wrong. It's going to be situational. And in a case like this, I think sitting on your hands and waiting for Republicans to come around might be the only thing you can do. They're just going to insist on their position. Democrats will insist on theirs. And as long as nobody thinks the department either is shut down or matters if it's shut down, given how much money is already floating around in the sector, then I guess it's going to be awfully difficult to find any sort of solution, because not only can no one define what a solution would be, no one's particularly interested in finding it. So it feels like a long shutdown for the Department of Homeland Security, which is fine because I'd love to see them run down the numbers on the slush fund. And I guess if you're going $70 million per jet, then eventually you will use it up and you'll need an appropriations bill. Okay, so time to move forward. It being a Wednesday, that automatically makes yesterday a Tuesday. That doesn't automatically mean there was voting happening, but there was, because we're kind of in voting season these days. Of course, we're also in award season, which means we can bring back the old fanfare for Greg that he doesn't like at all. We know, look, he's a humble fellow and he asks for a simple introduction and no fanfare actually necessary, but we like to do it because we enjoy having him around. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
It's Wabbit season.
Yeah, I should be playing something quieter by way of, all right, is it Wabbit season? It may be.
It's always web. No, it's duck season.
Yes.
Listen, my friend Rob George over on Twitter
Yeah.
always refers to Corey Lewandowski as the undersecretary. It's really funny.
That's really no
So if
other
you want
way
to take a position, that's the position to take. That's what I say.
Right. And, you got to be careful when you're talking about these two and the positions they take.
So we'll talk about Stephen Colbert today.
Okay,
And
we didn't
in
get a
talking
chance
about Stephen
yesterday.
Colbert, we're going to talk about James Talarico and Jasmine Crockett,
Yeah.
which it turns out is where the voting is happening because Texas has early voting. It's already started, and there are 2 competitive primaries, which mean that the voter turnout is going to be quite high. Like when only one side has a competitive primary, it's voting. But when both do, then everybody shows up.
That'd be the case. Oh, okay. All right. Yes, 2 competitive primaries for the same seat. I was like, well, what else is open?
Well,
I
they're
see.
fighting to be who's the senator.
Yeah.
Right
Now
now
I
it's
remember.
Cornyn, but Trump refuses to endorse him. Like all 3.
That's probably
that way,
good.
whoever wins, you see, I called it.
Yeah.
I never lose because I rigged the game. So, yeah. So that's basically the topic today. All of that mixed in.
Okay.
Homeland Security. Yeah. I mean, that'll happen at some point. But like, who is paying attention? I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, I got a couple of items in the inbox that basically, newspaper articles say, well, the 2 sides are still pretty far apart on this and they don't see any solution. Yeah, all right. That's kind of how it felt.
That's true with every kind of problem that the Congress has.
This one more so
until
than...
it's resolved, in which case they came to a solution. But until they do, they don't have one.
Yeah. Well, the solution was they keep pointing at it.
You need copy because people need to read.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
People don't read. You know what they do? They watch. So here's what happened. Let's start. I got a couple of videos.
Yes.
One, Stephen Colbert introducing
I'm ready.
Meeting James Talarico.
Yes.
And the other is Jen Psaki on her show, meeting and introducing Jasmine Crockett. And they're both interesting. And what I'm trying to do, it doesn't mean I've succeeded, is try to pick out snippets in these 15-minute interviews that give you a sense of the style and thinking of the individual candidates who are running against each other in Texas right now to see who represents the Democrats in the election in November for Senate.
Okay.
And we don't know whether it'll be John Cornyn or
At
Ken
Amazon.
Paxton,
Oops. Hey.
the crook.
All right. I see what's happening here.
Well, that's good. But I'm going to start before you play the video.
I think I have to silently play the ad that got in the way of one of them.
While you do that, I want to start with this Hollywood Reporter piece.
Okay.
Because Colbert had the interview pulled on Monday.
Right.
Made a statement on air about CBS telling him not to talk about it, and therefore he feels obligated to talk about it. Which got everybody talking about him.
And Barbara Streisand.
And then what the Late Show did is they played the Talarico piece on YouTube, which is where this interview is from.
Yeah.
And that got over 3 million views as of yesterday.
Oh, boy.
Which is way more than what people would have seen had they watched the Late Show.
Yeah, I think everybody who heard the story said, well, we know what's coming now.
Right.
More views.
So today, there's a piece in the Hollywood Reporter about the statement CBS made.
Okay.
Very short one. Which
we
didn't say he can't, interview Talarico. We just said that he'd have to interview other people, including Jasmine Crockett, and Colbert has a response to that last night. So it's now a 2-day story.
Okay.
And this is the Hollywood Reporter describing that reaction. I really don't want an adversarial relationship with the network. Exasperated Colbert reveals tensions with CBS's legal team. The Late Show host blasted the network's lawyers over a statement they made.
Blast.
Okay.
Right.
So Monday, Colbert makes statements. Tuesday, CBS publicly refutes Colbert's version of events.
No.
Like you weren't banned from doing it. You just had to follow our rules. So here's the monologue. I didn't want to play 3 videos. Colbert says, folks, there's another big story today I never got around to, and it's me.
Hey, you're not
Here's
supposed
what
to do the
happens.
news.
Last night I talked to Senate candidate James Talarico, but it wasn't on the show. We put the interview on our YouTube channel because there's something called the equal time rule
There is
And that rule says if a show on broadcast television has a qualified candidate on during an election, they have to offer equal time to all the candidates' opponents. Pretty famous rule, but here's the thing. There has long been a very famous exception to that rule. And that exception includes talk show interviews with politicians. We looked, and we can't find one example of this rule being enforced for any talk show interview, not only for my career, but for anyone's late-night career going back to the 60s.
Yeah,
but on January 21st,
every Sunday
from FCC Chair Brendan Carr, he issued a letter saying he was thinking about getting the rule. He hadn't gotten rid of it, but CBS, a quote, but CBS generously did it for him and told me unilaterally I had to abide by the equal time rule, something I've never been asked to do for an interview in the 21 years of this job. Now, that decision is their right, just like I have the right to talk about that decision, which they told me not to.
Yes. Is that how long he's been in that job? That's crazy.
Well, no, not that job, but multiple jobs.
All right. Like I felt like, and I thought it was crazy that it was Wednesday already. Right. This guy's been in the job for 21 years.
So anyway, this all happened Monday. I was ready to let it go. I made some jokes about it. That's what they pay me to do. And then my group chat blew up because without ever talking to me, the corporation put out this press release, this statement.
Dope.
He read the statement. They say the Late Show was not prohibited by CBS from broadcasting the interview with Representative James Talarico. The show is providing legal guidance that the broadcast could trigger the FCC equal time rule for two other candidates, including Jasmine Crockett, and presented options for how equal time for other candidates can be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly the statement was written by, and I'm guessing, and for lawyers, Colbert said. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to tell them how to do their jobs, but since they seem intent on telling me how to do mine, here we go.
Okay.
I know we can book other guests. I book them all the time. I've had Crockett on twice.
Okay.
But then the network won't let me show you her picture without including her opponent, so I'll have to show you this picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein instead.
All right.
Right. Then he talked more about the drama. And he said, go check out the interview. It's pretty good. And so I have a brief snippet of that interview I wanted to play.
Okay. No,
so go to the tape, the Talarico one.
All right. So I have I have it queued up for, I guess, their introduction. Do you want me to fast forward to the?
No. Do the introduction.
All right. So you said about 43 seconds or so. I'm at 41 and I stopped there. Okay. Well, there we go. Some clapping.
Thing. I don't usually say this to a guest, but if people are watching this right now, it's because they found us online on YouTube. I did an act of the show that's on tonight explaining why. It's not the first time you've caused some drama. FCC opening probe into The View after appearance by Talarico.
The View?
Do you mean to cause trouble?
I think that Donald Trump is worried that we're about to flip Texas.
All right, you can skip to the next piece because he talks a little bit about that. We already know about the controversy. Again, what I'm trying to do is give you a sense of who Talarico is. He is a seminarian, deeply religious. This is Texas. And I just want to give you a feel for what's going on here.
Okay. And so we now wanted to move forward to, what's our next timestamp?
4:05.
4:05. Okay. I'm scrolling and scrubbing and all sorts of things. Yeah, you had 4:05.
I don't really know, but that's just
you do know. All right. Well, I'm going to say 4:05, just out of the blue. No one prompted me for that one. All right, let's see. So 4 minutes into this YouTube piece, we now land here.
Up in some of the conversations you've had on the Texas State House floor, which some of the videos I've seen you do, and one of the things that's gotten you attention out there is that you are a Presbyterian seminarian. Presently?
Yes.
You're a seminarian?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
the right attempts to co-opt Christianity, to say that you can't believe in God, you can't believe in Christ. I think that Donald Trump might have said something like that at the National Prayer Breakfast, like you can't actually be a Christian, be a Democrat. But the religious right is largely a political movement that references spirituality, but it's a political. What is your heartfelt hand out to the people who want to use religion as a tool of political power?
Well, for 50 years, the religious right, a political movement, that is the perfect description for it. They convinced a lot of our fellow Christians that the most important issues were abortion and gay marriage. Two issues that aren't mentioned in the Bible, 2 issues that Jesus never talked about. Jesus in Matthew 25 tells us exactly how you and I and every one of our fellow believers, how we're going to be judged and how we're going to be saved. By feeding the hungry, by healing the sick, by welcoming the stranger. Nothing about going to church, nothing about voting Republican. It was all about how you treat other people. Don't.
I knew this Christianity thing was going to catch on, and there's a big popular thing in the audience. They all love it. It's a great idea. It will spread around the world, I predict. Now, we can continue on.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't belong to just one party.
Right, and it belongs to a lot of the people who are probably applauding as well. So that's good news.
I
knew it was popular.
I've said before, don't tell me what you believe. Show me how you treat other people, and I'll tell you what you believe. And I think in our faith, we've got to get back to those fundamentals. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas, and when I was little, he told me that Christianity is a simple religion. Not an easy religion, he would always clarify, but a simple religion because Jesus gave us 2 commandments, love God and love neighbor. And there was no exception to that second commandment. Love thy neighbor regardless of race or gender or sexual orientation or immigration status or religious affiliation. And it's why I have fought so hard for the separation of church and state in the state capitol in Texas, because...
Well, I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, please.
Because you did, as a state rep, you fought against a bill requiring the 10 Commandments to be displayed in schools.
That's right.
Why, even on that level, do you think it's important to keep the separation, not just for the state, but for the church?
Well, because we are called to love all of our neighbors, including our Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, agnostic, atheist neighbors, and forcing our religion down their throats is not love. And it's why I have fought... so hard for that sacred separation. I think it's
really interesting
in our First Amendment, because
You say what now?
I think it's really interesting.
Yes,
he's making the point from a democratic point of view, and I am reminded of Father Drinan and other liberal religious figures, back in the 60s, that religion doesn't belong to just one party, and certainly not the Republican Party. And again, remember, yes, he's running in a Democratic primary, but should he win, he is running to win all of Texas. And the question on the table is, does his style and fit in with what Texans want? We'll see, because there's a primary going on and they're voting right now.
Yes.
Now, I will say also, he's a very good speaker. He reminds me of Beto O'Rourke and Pete Buttigieg and John Ossoff. We have a very strong Democratic bench with younger players, which is why I think Obama said the other day the Democratic Party just needs to get younger. Well, these are the younger people he's talking about.
I see. Yes.
Among others.
Okay.
All right. Now, he happens to be running against a very talented opponent, Jasmine Crockett.
She's young.
She's young. She is extremely persuasive in terms of where she stands. You don't have any doubts about it. She was interviewed on Jen Psaki's show.
Yeah, we're doing equal time.
We'll do the FCC Brendan Carr thing and give him equal time.
You can't throw us off. Okay.
Even though we don't have to, but we want to, because we want people to know a little bit more about Jasmine Crockett.
I just want you to know that. I don't have to do this, and yet here I am at 2:25 into the interview with Jen Psaki. This is identified as a good and fun part. Okay.
Let me just start with some of the news from today, which I just outlined. I mean, in CBS's statement on what happened with Colbert's show last night, they name-checked you. I mean, they said this: the show was provided legal guidance that the broadcast could trigger the FCC equal time rule for 2 other candidates, including Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. What do you make of that explanation?
We actually received a phone call, and that was a little bit earlier today. And in that call, they explained that they actually told CBS that they could go ahead and move forward with the interview of James Talarico. They just needed to offer me equal time. I did not get a request from the Colbert Show to go on. As you know, I've been on Colbert multiple times. And frankly, if we would have gotten an offer, that would have been great. But we're in the middle of early voting, so I'm kind of focused on being in Texas at this moment. I don't know what to believe, that's for sure. But I got that phone call as I was out talking to voters.
That's it. So there's so many things to talk to you about again. But they called you today, but they decided not to air the interview last night. You've been on Colbert a number of times, as you just said. Did you have any issue when they were going to air the interview last night, when they promoted it, or when it was supposed to air? Or did anyone from your campaign?
No, we didn't have an issue. I mean, we've never run into an issue with Colbert. And even as you talked about The View, supposedly this FCC complaint came about because I had more time than Mr. Talarico when I went on there after I declared my candidacy. Listen, I will tell you that I have no love for Barry Weiss. I have no love for Brendan Carr whatsoever.
No
but
love.
I do think that, as you also mentioned, Kimmel, it is important that we resist in this moment. And so there were a number of options that could be put on the table. And frankly, the Late Show decided that this was the option. And I think that it was a good strategy. I mean, look at what happened when they tried to censor CCOT. We found out that you could get a lot more views. So I think it probably gave my opponent the boost he was looking for. So I think it's probably better that he didn't get on and that they went straight to streaming, because we know that when we resist and when we know that it seems like they're trying to change the rules and bend the knee to this president, that it backfires in a historic fashion.
Well, she's ready for the Senate.
What's that?
She's ready for the Senate. She can speak extemporaneously for extended periods of time.
Yeah, but I mean,
well done.
Look at what they're both talking
stuff.
about. Talarico basically is talking about love and love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
And Crockett's talking about resistance and not bending the knee.
Yeah.
And there, in a nutshell, you have their two campaigns, and Texas will decide which one they want.
Yeah. Well, it'll be very interesting because just comparing the words, I suppose, if they wanted to make an issue of it, it was interesting to hear Talarico saying, well, our approach is we have love for everyone. And Jasmine Crockett says, well, not these two people.
I mean, if you're not resisting, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
And which one fits the mood? It's just fascinating.
I don't know.
They're both good candidates, but in totally different ways.
Yes.
And Texas will decide which style they want.
Vote twice. That'll solve it.
Yeah, only if you're a Republican.
Right. Well, they will do that. And they'll try and mess with they may vote 3 times, 1 extra for their own primary as well. Two great appearances there, and level-headed response from Jasmine Crockett. Told it like it was, said, yeah, sure. And he got a big boost out of it, too. And that's fine. I'm not worried. That doesn't disturb me.
But just step back
it's
and
good.
She reinforces the point that this really does help Talarico. Not only is Talarico getting all of the newspaper endorsements.
Yeah.
Not all. I mean, Crockett got at least one that I know of. But Talarico's getting all the buzz when early voting is going on.
Yeah, that's
about
good for
trying to suppress his voice, even though his voice is about as mild as it gets. And Jasmine Crockett acknowledges, the controversy probably helps him. This is the Streisand effect. So we'll see what effect it has on voters, because they're voting now.
Well, it's good.
And we won't know, but we do know turnout's off the roof.
Not everybody would have opted for the strategy of acknowledging the obvious truth. They would have said, well, I need to push back on the boost he got and talk about how really it's it's not that way, or no, I got the boost. And she said, everybody saw what happened. I got eyes.
Yeah, no, it's nice when everybody acknowledges the same facts. I'm just so not used to it over the past 8 years.
Yeah. Right, true. No, I liked the way she did it. I know there's a lot of strategists would have told her, well, we need to find a way to craft your statement such that it doesn't acknowledge the boost he got. Well, that's stupid.
No,
the whole story is the boost.
I'm just going to work in, bend the knee, and resist 9 times.
Right. So, well done. Everybody handled it well. Good news.
I mean, you could have done affordability, too, but we just didn't have time.
We don't. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you know, because you probably watched the whole thing. But there's another 4 minutes of this. Maybe.
Yeah. No,
maybe
I didn't
it's all
watch
about
the rest of it. I was preparing it for the show, and I will absolutely watch the rest of it. One of our regulars on Daily Kos sent me the interview this morning, and I haven't had a chance to see the whole thing, but I absolutely intend to. And again, two very good candidates, not telling you who to vote for. I don't have a specific preference. I just have to acknowledge what Jasmine Crockett did. This helps Talarico on the one hand, and on the other hand, in the end, they're voting not just in a Democratic primary, but they're trying to put themselves in the position to win Texas outright, which is going to be a closer election than usual for a couple of different reasons. One is that Cornyn has been rejected somewhat by MAGA, and therefore the Ken Paxton, Cornyn, it's not clear who's going to win, but Paxton leads in the polls, and Paxton is so awful, he puts that Senate seat at play. That's one thing that's going on. So it's not quite a Roy Moore situation, but it's analogous at least.
Okay.
And then the other piece is that Trump has alienated Latinos, Hispanics, South Texas so much.
Yes.
That they're willing to vote Democratic, or at least stay home if they're Republicans and can't see themselves voting Democratic. And that, again, makes the election, viable. So if you're a Democrat, what do you do? Do you go with the candidate you like? Do you go with the candidate who you think could win? Because this time we could actually win that seat. What do you do?
If you see a difference.
Well, they'll decide. It's Texas. It's up to them.
Yeah, right. Well, Texas is a stirred up hornet's nest, so we'll see which direction they decide to go. And but how long is this? When does the primary end? Do we know this?
I think March 3rd.
Okay, so we don't have to wait a long time. I mean, if they're in early voting, it can't go on forever.
My guesstimate is March 3rd, just like I guesstimated 4:05.
Sure. All right. It's probably right. They can't be early voting forever, but it does feel awfully early. Okay, well, we'll be right back.
We professionally did this segment to exactly be the time we had.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We begin anew. I don't know. There's no other candidates being interviewed that we have to give equal time to. Did we give equal time? I think we gave more time to Jasmine Crockett there, possibly. I'd have to double check that, but I guess that puts the universe in balance.
Well, we gave most of the time to Colbert, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, okay, right. He's not even running. Although it was once rumored that he would.
The story.
Yeah. Well, he played this very well also, of course. And, I guess now he has to start thinking about what comes after his CBS stint ends. And this is a great test run. Can we drive people to a YouTube or elsewhere, streaming elsewhere? And the answer actually was established well ahead of this episode. Many people have demonstrated, yes. You can. So I thought it was interesting that he wasn't allowed to even say at some point. He was like, I can't tell you the URL, but you can go and look on YouTube. I was hoping he would say, I can't even tell you where to find it. But if you didn't go to Uye Ubte, you will, and search for our show name, which I can say, you'll find it. It'll be right there. It's a little too easy to get around. So, it'll be interesting to see if I'm not certain that it isn't a plus in the Trump column if he ends up destroying and ultimately just erasing the broadcast networks and people just move to a different model. And people are probably ready to do that.
Well, I'm
anyway,
okay to lose Fox,
Yeah, we'll start with them and see how it goes. How about that? And just so if we need somebody on deck, I don't know, let's say it's CBS.
Right. Again, Talarico, this is a quote
yes?
from his interview. They want us talking about furries in bathrooms so we don't realize they're picking our pockets, they're closing our schools, they're gutting our health care, they're raising taxes on all of us while they cut taxes for the billionaire donors. The culture wars are a smokescreen because the real fight isn't left versus right, it's top versus bottom. So, he says all the right things, and that's good. Now, what is the country doing right now in terms of how they think about these things? Generic congressional ballot from YouTube, which is a regular feature monthly. D+4 in late January, D+7 now. And here's interesting. The net favorables for various and sundry selected, random politicians.
Okay.
Pete Buttigieg +1, AOC -5, Newsom -8, Trump -11, Vance -12, Lewandowski -26, and Bondi -27.
Wow.
So the undersecretary is not doing very well in the polls, just so you know.
No. But, all right, he is, metaphorically speaking, atop Pam Bondi, which, great. Maybe that's wonderful.
Yeah, well, get your mind out of the gutter. What can I tell you?
I'm flying it around on a jumbo jet. It's nowhere near the gutter.
So Mark Halperin,
yes,
who I dislike, nonetheless, has this being tweeted around by his fellow reporters. Says, last night on Capitol Hill, the senior Trump political command briefed its core team on the midterms, reported previously by Politico, more detailed. This is what they had to eat. Chicken and steak buffet, just so you know. It was 2 hours.
Protein, that's
all
good.
Really important reporting. Who was
Why it
there,
matters.
who wasn't there. Susie Wiles was there. 25 slides presented by Tony Fabrizio, the Trump pollster. The economy will be the issue in the election, Fabrizio said. Banning stock trading for Congress, transparency on health insurance data, housing affordability, and taking credit for closing the border. But that doesn't resonate. Taking credit for closing the border does not resonate.
Okay.
Mark Halperin, conservative whisperer. Men, moderates, true independents, and Hispanic voters are the true persuadable voters. This wasn't a pessimistic message. You have to spend time on podcasts more than national news. Paid media should go on targeted media, not broadcast or even cable. So I wanted to talk about that because Fabrizio's telling the Trump team, forget about 60 Minutes. Don't waste your time.
Okay. Yeah, that's not likely to help you out all that much.
Right.
Got it.
So, they just talked about how rare it was for the president's party to control things. It wasn't a pessimistic message, but it sounds totally pessimistic.
But it wasn't. Stephen Chung says. Tricia
but again,
McLaughlin
a couple of things I think are important.
She's quitting.
The border stuff doesn't matter right now. It's the economy.
Okay.
And they're preparing themselves for the idea that, it's normal for the president's party to lose seats.
Okay.
Now, will they? Probably. Here's how they're going to try and stop it, not by switching their message to something stupid that nobody really cares about.
Oh, well,
Republicans brace for losses, says the New York Times, push more voting restrictions in Congress. Legislation that would require proof of citizenship to register was only the beginning as the GOP presses to sharply limit voting in line with Trump's false claims of widespread fraud. And you know that because Kristi Noem said so. Our job at Homeland Security, and this is false, her job and job description has nothing to do with this whatsoever. My job is to make sure that the right people vote and vote for the right people.
Yes.
What the hell is she talking about? It's a state-run function. It's got nothing to do with DHS. And why are you saying the quiet part out loud?
I don't know. But it appears to be the case. They're doing this everywhere. And I just realized all these things that won't resonate. I need to grab a soundbite about things that do and don't matter. I'll grab it from another movie. But
the GOP's relentless focus on the bill and even more restrictive measure making its way through the House, both of which face a steep uphill path to becoming law, is aimed chiefly at intensifying pressure within their own ranks to muscle through new voting restrictions and seek to reshape the electorate. But it also allows Republicans to hammer Trump's falsehoods, lies, New York Times, about widespread illegal voting, particularly by undocumented immigrants, helping them build a case, however groundless, lies, New York Times, that any Democratic victories in November will be a result of cheating.
Yes,
so in other words,
the story they want to tell.
They're preparing their base for the idea that, we lost, but that's because Democrats always cheat.
Yes, that's their main
Therefore,
story.
we can do anything we want because we're only trying to stop cheating.
Yeah, if we do it, it's not cheating. That's what it says in the Constitution. Because I'm the president.
So then there is a bill which would grant far more authority to Department of Homeland Security to obtain information about voters from states. They're trying this. States are turning them down. They want, as you said, the one-day election. Election should end on Election Day. Well, fine. Then authorize them to count early, but you won't, like in Pennsylvania.
Right.
That's why it takes so long.
Yeah, and I think, the aim here is the more they can compact voting, and if they can get back to a single day of in-person voting, which seems to be what they're after, then
Democrats
all
fear
the other
bill
obstruction
could get fast-tracked to the floor. And Mike Johnson has already stated that questioning the security of the upcoming election is an issue he does not plan to let fade from voters' minds. It's something that's going to be a continuing theme here. It's something we'll continue to push. Luckily, he's incredibly incompetent and only has a one-vote majority.
Yeah, well, that's true. And some of the people who are finishing up their term and getting ready to retire seem dedicated to the idea that they ought to drag down Johnson in whatever he's trying to do. But they also, I guess, find themselves free to express their fundamental personal opposition to the idea that we should be tinkering with our election system such that the outcomes are rigged. It actually offends even a few Republicans, and though they are on their way out the door, this is when they always find their courage. Sometimes it's okay for them to find their courage in the last few minutes and stretch the fight out a little bit longer.
So Johnson, again, I think this is important because people have to understand that Mike Johnson is the face of election denial. Not the nutcases like Sidney, whatever her name is.
Well,
Mr. Johnson, who played a lead role in the effort to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, says
that should not be forgotten.
With a link, has raised questions in recent days about 3 House Republican candidates from California who hold leads on Election Day in 2024 and then watched the lead, as he say, magically whittled away, end quote, when more mail-in ballots came and were counted, because California counts by mail.
Yeah.
It looks on his face to be fraudulent, said, even though there's no evidence of that, and none of the Republicans leveled any accusation of fraud when they considered their races. He didn't mention that Republicans also won districts in 2024, in part because of ballots that came in after Election Day. Gabe Evans in Colorado, for example. It wasn't called for days as votes to continue to come in. Representative Young Kim, California, saw the leads grow substantially with votes tallied after Election Day. So Democrats argue the bills are trying to disenfranchise people, and Republicans don't even really have to make an argument. They're just trying to get the concept in that whatever happens, if Democrats somehow sneak ahead after having been behind, you have to call all ball games. As long as we have a lead, they end in the 7th inning. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. He is the face of election denial, and people need to understand this, and that's why it's so important that he only has a one-vote majority. People are willing to vote around him. Republicans are starting to desert him on various issues. He can't get rules through Rules Committee. All of this matters because he is just every kind of awful, not just incompetent, but should he succeed in the things he actually wishes to do, he's a terrible person.
Yes. They should not lose sight of that. And an excellent point made up right up at the top by the New York Times, that background to all of this, if you think he's just, he's a reasonable Republican guy, but he's still under the thumb of Donald Trump, and he's just doing what the party demands. do remember that he actually did take an active role in advising and pushing for the case that the 2024 election had been stolen. Right? Just as crazy as Trump.
He's a smoother person than Ron Johnson, Senator Johnson, but he's no better.
No, he's coming from the same place. I mean, Cleta Mitchell can speak more clearly, but she also is a conspiracy nut, just like the rest of them.
Yep.
Okay.
So this Nicholas Grossman, lawyer, good guy.
Yeah.
A piece in the Bulwark follow-up, Trump can't steal the midterms. The case of being vigilant without panicking. Mm-hmm. He will not be able to steal the elections. He and his allies will keep trying to manipulate the midterms in their favor, which Democrats, pro-democracy activists, and all Americans who care about our constitutional system should keep working to counter, but he won't succeed. No matter how much Team Trump disregards norms and laws, there's no mechanism for taking over state elections. Mm-hmm. No mechanism for reversing losses. No mechanism for preventing newly elected members of Congress from sitting. Vigilance is warranted, but excessive fear plays into the authoritarian's hands. This is not a call for complacency, but I think it's important to right-size worries, to focus on what could realistically happen rather than lose time and expend attention and resources worrying about what can't.
Yeah,
because authoritarianism gets in our heads.
Sure. However,
right. Trump regime's desire for domination is bottomless, he says, but its capacity is not.
Well,
not get people
true.
To obey in advance. You're not CBS. You don't have to do it just because, like, in advance I'll just be nice and maybe you'll leave me alone. Mm-hmm. That's not how it works for regular people.
No. But I don't know that anybody is... I don't know who's doing that besides corporate entities, but okay.
Right. So he lays out the power of things he hates. He hates people like Mark Kelly raising his voice and all that sort of stuff.
What? Why?
So there's a good chance that all this partisan gerrymandering will be a wash, and that even if Republicans max out the gains, a swing of 4 won't matter. This is the 2018 midterms during Trump's first term, 41 House seats. Now, a lot of them are now being fought over in red districts.
Yeah.
But only, if you're only 15 points red, that's not enough sometimes.
Yeah, in some cases.
Right. So America does have a federal goon squad that answers to Trump, Stephen Miller, and Kristi Noem and ICE, and that's bad, but on the bright side, they don't have enough goons.
So it is thought. We should probably point out we really don't have any clear idea how many goons they have or what a goon is and where they can come up with more. But on the federal roster at the moment, no, probably not.
Right. So they try seizing ballots in 2026. Might be able to disrupt the re-election of John Ossoff, but they won't stop it, and they won't stop the Democrats from taking the House.
Not the actual result of the people voting. I think the worry is that other things will get stopped in the ways that he is saying that it's not impossible that they could try some terrible things or that everyone should just la-di-da their way to November or whatever the hell it is this time around and relax, everything will be fine. He does caution that he's not doing that, but to the extent that it relies on, the rules of how elections and assumption of office work say you can't do this. I know, but you've been watching what has been happening to rules and things that everybody knows what the law is and what the Constitution demands, that have been disappointed once in a while. Yes? Yep. Yes. You should acknowledge that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that discussion yesterday. Every day on social media. I engaged in it briefly yesterday, only to remind people that look, maybe I'm coming at it from a unique perspective, maybe not. I mean, a lot of people think the same things, but from my perspective, I just wanted to remind people that I have a certain amount of experience, measured in years, of people of all sorts. My own political allies, the political press, the elected officials, influencers of all kinds, saying this thing that you're imagining happening is not how it works. You just don't understand. And I've gone through it and then was around for the day that they all learned that is, or at least can be, how it works. And as a matter of fact, is from that point, or has been from that point on, the way it works. But you insisted that it wasn't. And I'm just pointing out that sometimes the conventional wisdom lands on, yeah, but this can't happen. And, well, I mean, if the Trump presidency, 2 of them, doesn't convince you that the things that can't happen can sometimes happen, well, then I don't know what to tell you. So, all right, if you don't want to spend your time imagining what to do in these cases, that is fine. I have some. And you probably don't want me spending my time doing your job. So why don't we just respect each other's spheres here and say that people who can, in fact, imagine ways through the existing structure and rules to getting to that terrible result should share that information so that those pathways to disaster are blocked, and then all of your plans will work just great. That seems fine to me. That's the compromise I'm settling on. Yeah.
So I have to tell you, that's it.
All right.
That's the stuff I have to.
That seems like
today.
a fine.
I thought it was interesting. And,
I agree.
So I wanted to bring it up, and I think it's really important to understand just how deep the Democratic younger bench really is.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'm happy to understand that, especially when we get to hear from a couple of them. Yep. And I guess the FCC demands that we hear from all of them now. I don't know why they wanted to do that, but I guess they've backed themselves into that position. All the younger candidates have to be heard from.
You'll be happy to know the FCC called me this morning and said, you never let David speak. And
right.
I said, well, he's got another hour where he does, so it's like equal.
That's equal time. Yeah. Well, we're outside of their jurisdiction. That's an important point,
too. That's another thing.
Right, is that I think the FCC guy, if I recall correctly, we read a statement from him yesterday and saying, if you want to move to a streaming platform, you're outside of our jurisdiction. It's just the broadcast networks that we would require equal time for, or fairness doctrine, if they were trying to bring that back. That sometimes gets mentioned. But if you're on cable or a streaming platform, and increasingly everybody's moved to that and increasingly abandoning the broadcast. Also, by the way, most people who are getting the broadcast networks are in fact physically delivering it to themselves via a stream. So at some point, it'll be interesting. If it becomes in the interest of the Trump administration, they will just declare the broadcast networks to be streaming services after all. Right. If they need it to be.
So listen, it's time for your go away, come back tomorrow thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can do that. So you're allowed to, if you need to, you can go without hearing that. But I don't want to depart without hearing my favorite new clip.
Go away and come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
I happen to like that one.
Yeah, I love that one. That's a good classic. And tomorrow we can say when you come back. How about that? Movie clips define everything. By the way, what I wanted to grab is the, what year was it? 1979, Bill Murray classic, Meatballs, not really considered to be one of his top classics, but I
consider it to be one of his top classics.
All right.
What a wonderful movie.
I just needed to grab the "It Just Doesn't Matter" chant. Yeah. And that way,
it just doesn't matter.
When we talk about, immigration, well, as an issue, you've blown it, and now it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Anyway, take care, and I'll come back tomorrow.
Very good. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the strong start. And let's see, we got a couple of minutes here before our top of the hour break, and so I'll explore some of what we have in store in Instapaper. We can just jump right on over there. I guess since we had made some mention at the top of the show about Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski, I mean, they remain in the news. I did see an interesting piece, yet another interesting piece there, day after day, with the interesting pieces over at ProPublica. I wondered during our discussion yesterday of the very foolish claim that somehow the Love Express Flying Love Palace 737 on order by Kristi Noem and the Undersecretary Corey Lewandowski, was somehow, you remember the pronouncement that it was actually going to save taxpayers lots of money, this $70 million luxury jet. And it was going to save lots of money because even though it was a 737 outfitted for a passenger capacity of 17 in the configuration they were buying, it could be used and could do double duty. No pun intended about the playing with the two bidets. Big, beautiful bidets at that. That they were going to do double duty and use it for deportations. And I guess I imagine that had to have come out of the mouth of Tricia McLaughlin, who, by the way, is also in the news. She's leaving. She's exiting from the Department of Homeland Security. I don't know whether she's exiting government in its entirety or whether she's moving over to the campaign side. I can't imagine she's done lying. That seems to be her single passion in life. But she is leaving the government position she's in now, which is fantastic news, unless, of course, it's a brazen lie. That's always a possibility. But she was really among, as I've said on the show a number of times, among the worst of the worst. And it's very difficult to imagine a rival to Stephen Chung for that title, but if there is one, she's it. Anyway, and then her last couple of days of really outlandish lies have been anonymous. She's been granted anonymity to lie with even more impunity, I guess. But even she must have thought it was too ridiculous to simply float, well, it's going to save the taxpayers' money because it could be used for deportations, and then refined it to say, well, it could be used for high-profile deportations, which I guess, given that they're attempting to deport, anywhere between 10 and 100 million people, some of them are going to be high profile. And I guess maybe I suppose they may have in mind, we'll be deporting celebrities along the way, for instance. Maybe they may very well do that. And so they might, Donald Trump might think, well, they do have to be deported, but if they're going to go, they should be treated like celebrities. The way I think every celebrity, including me, should be treated. If you're going to deport them, you give them the red carpet deportation treatment. So I thought it was possible that just to justify the otherwise ridiculous statement, they might try to do a high-profile deportation on this plane. I really don't think they'll ever try it because I don't think no one wants anybody using her bathroom or bidet. And who would? But I thought if there was anybody that I guess it would maybe be for Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who was cooling his heels in the federal penitentiary on like a 45-year sentence, and when pardoned and freed by Trump. And I thought, I guess that might be for him. They could use this plane, although I don't know that they've actually deported him from the country or what the plans are. I mean, once you get the pardon, I don't know whether Trump's thinking here is, well, I'll pardon you. That's one thing, but you are from Honduras, so you got to get the hell out of this country, or whether he's like, I don't know, he's got a lot of money and he could give some of it to me. So we'll either drag our heels sending him out of the country or allow him to stay. And it looks like Hernandez may be the only person for whom the administration has gives any respect to the argument, well, if I get sent back to my home country, my life will be in danger. I'll be a political target. Everybody else, it's tough luck, but this guy has access to a lot of money, so I guess not. So anyway, what is the status of Juan Orlando Hernandez? And part of the answer given here by ProPublica, amid mass ICE arrests, Trump pardon recipient Juan Orlando Hernandez given special treatment, above and beyond the pardon, I guess. After the former Honduran president was pardoned, ICE dropped its detainer on him. And I mean, I don't know the lingo, but I take that to mean that they were monitoring him and or holding him in custody. and then decided not to anymore. Is that what it means? Dropped its detainer on him. And he was whisked away, which is usually a bad sign. If you're involved, if you have a problem with ICE or you're involved at all, have any interaction whatsoever with ICE, and it ends with you being whisked away, ordinarily that means to a holding cell in a detention center somewhere in a converted mailboxes, etc., or something like that, wherever. But no. In this case, whisked away to a luxury hotel in New York City, which is the kind of whisked away we all wish we were getting, I think. Kerry Blackinger, or possibly Blackinger, but B-L-A-K, no C, B-L-A-K-I-N-G-E-R, spelled with a K, Kerry as well, K-E-R-I, reported this today. This is at 5:30 in the morning. Good for you getting up early. I imagine this was probably finished mostly last night. But Kerry, thanks very much for reporting on this. For months, we are told, President Trump has railed against Latin American narco-terrorists flooding the United States with, quote, lethal poison that his health secretary used to snort off of toilet seats. Which, what a brag. I don't know. I keep seeing it described as a brag, and I can't really get my head around how it is a brag. And, I mean, I don't know what... It doesn't really matter what you're doing, but if it's done in close proximity to a toilet seat, like head down to the toilet seat, you don't want any part of it. Anyway, Trump has, of course, railed against Latin American narco-terrorists flooding the United States with lethal poison. He has used the scourge of drug trafficking as a rationale for dozens of military strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, which have left more than 140 people dead. Yes, they continue right up to this day, and the death toll keeps rising. Last month, Trump cheered a military assault, you know the one, by U.S. forces that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. I don't think we mentioned his wife's name enough. And brought them to the U.S. to face charges related to cocaine trafficking. That's the toilet seat thing. You know, in RFK, ooh, cocaine trafficking. I got to meet these guys. Or, I'm sorry, it's RFK. Cocaine trafficking. Where can I meet this guy? Maduro, Trump said, led a vicious cartel. This is Trump, sorry. Vicious cartel that flooded our nation with lethal poison responsible for the deaths of countless Americans and the pickling of one whom I decided to make the Health and Human Services Secretary, who apparently wears jeans getting into and out of the pool. That seems weird, too. Bam. Hey, I like the music. I just wanted to listen to the end of the music and play along with you. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's the end of our 1-minute break, and we left off in the middle of reading the beginning of the ProPublica piece about what the hell exactly, what the hell, we got to find out what the hell's going on with Juan Orlando Hernandez now that he's been pardoned by Trump. So we pointed out, of course, the background that this all happened in. There's a bird outside that's commenting along with us that it seemed odd and out of keeping with the railing against Latin American drug cartels and trafficking to pardon the alleged, more than alleged, he was convicted of being the smuggling kingpin in all of this. But I guess as a fellow president, Trump feels that they are peers in that sense, and he doesn't like anybody in the United States thinking that it's fair game to imprison a country's president for some strange reason. So, when it comes to former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was tried and convicted in the U.S. in 2024 and sentenced to 45 years in prison for taking bribes. Well, we can't have that be a crime. And allowing traffickers, to export more than 400 tons of cocaine to the U.S. That's like 4 or 5 days worth. Trump has taken a decidedly softer tone, even if RFK Jr. himself is not capable of a softer tone. By the way, in case you haven't seen the videos circulating right now, you don't really have to, but I mentioned RFK Jr. and the weird thing about the jeans. He's put out a video with Kid Rock, which, what effing planet are we on? But there we are. Put out a video with Kid Rock of the two of them, I guess. Remember, he's supposed to be the Health and Human Services Secretary, so I don't know what he thinks human services are, but I guess serving human. Anybody who's been killed by the side of the road, he can eat legally, I guess. Whatever. The two of them were, I guess, staging a video in which I don't know what they're doing. They work out a little bit, and they go in a sauna for a little while, and shirtless, which, blah. But anyway, they sit in the sauna, they go in a hot tub, and they do a cold plunge as well. So there's a lot of water involved in all of this. I don't know why. No one ever wanted to see Kid Rock shirtless, but I guess he felt like he had to go shirtless too because RFK Jr. was doing it. But it was very interesting. And so interesting in the sense that they're going in and out of pools, hot tubs, cold plunge pools, and Kid Rock is in, I don't know, like sort of like basketball length shorts, I guess, because the idea of Kid Rock like in a Speedo. No, even he won't, even he knows that's stupid. But RFK Jr., I guess, thinks that his physique is something that's worth showing off. And I guess from the waist up, you might say, yeah, all right. I mean, I don't know whether it's, jacked on steroids or what. Allegedly, that seems to be the case. Plus a little bit of toilet seat cocaine and dead bear. But for whatever reason, I mean, it only calls more attention to the fact that you are shirtless if you are in your jeans the whole time. And I think probably people wouldn't notice if you were, well, I'm weightlifting. Well, ordinarily, how about some shorts or something to get into more or less restriction on movement. So when you're squatting, for instance, the pants, the jeans don't get in the way. You get more flexion in your knees, whatever. But if you are also going in the pool, in the water, like doing that in jeans is something that people notice, which only leads to questions about, I know he used to be, like a heroin addict, allegedly. I mean, it's alleged by him, so I no reason not to believe it. I mean, it's a statement against interest, I guess, but that only gets you past hearsay. It doesn't establish the truth of the matter asserted, but we believe it. And he eats dead bears, maybe, kind of, sort of, and there's a lot of reasons to think that there might be something unseemly happening in the general pantsal area. But yeah, some real speculation. Why won't he wear even a long, board shorts or something, like, a very long bathing suit would do the trick, everyone would say. Maybe this one's a little longer than usual, but it's something that we are used to getting in and out of a pool, for instance. But no, jeans, which only leads to speculation. Is he covering, if he was a heroin user, track marks in his legs? Is that where he injected? Another now live thesis, Nazi tattoos. I guess that could be too. But presumably he has the money to laser those off, so I'm not really sure what he's hiding there, but I don't care. It's funnier to see him jumping in and out of pools in jeans. Look at my body, except not here. It's an odd thing to say and do. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about what's going on with Juan Orlando Hernandez, and his release to a beautiful luxury hotel that isn't even a Trump hotel. It's very odd. No controversy around Hernandez so far about what he's wearing, but that may change shortly. I don't know how. I'm just saying. Hernandez, as Trump has said, has been treated very harshly and unfairly. So unfairly, in fact, that on December 1st, Trump pardoned the former president after he served less than 4 of those 45 years. So we didn't even get to 10%. But the federal government's magnanimity did not end there. That's the important part. On the day he was to be released, records show, Hernandez had an immigration detainer, and it's explained here as a request for law enforcement agencies to hold non-citizens for pickup by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in place. So there was an order. All right, we'll pardon you, but now the immigration folks, La Migra, is going to pick you up and decide what to do with you. But here, too, the Trump administration's treatment of Hernandez differed from its public objectives. Other non-citizens caught up in recent immigration sweeps, the vast majority of whom do not have criminal records, it's worth pointing out, have faced swift efforts, nonetheless, to deport them, even to countries where they may face threats. But in Hernandez's case, the Federal Bureau of Prisons scrambled to get his detainer removed so that he could walk free when he got his pardon. And Hernandez did not just walk out of the prison. That would have been insulting enough. But rather, despite persistent budget and staffing shortages, and maybe at the time even a government shutdown, prison officials paid a specialized tactical team overtime. Yay, we all make double, right? Overtime to drive Hernandez from a high security facility in West Virginia, where they were holding him, to the famed 5-star. There, by the way, are 5-star resorts in West Virginia that they could have taken him there to take him to the Greenbrier. But no, he wanted to go to the 5-star Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. This, according to records and 3 people familiar with the situation. Before he left, Hernandez was allowed to use the captain's government phone to talk to the federal prison system's deputy director, Joshua Smith, who, by the way, was convicted himself in a drug trafficking conspiracy before Trump pardoned him in 2021. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing, right? I don't know. It puts me in mind of this thing that's, I guess Virginia was the last to get rid of, the idea of never allowing convicted felons to vote again. And I guess the logic was supposed to be, well, convicted felons will only vote for fellow convicted felons. And then you're going to end up with a convicted felon president, which, has already happened. So I don't know. But I guess maybe the thinking there was, maybe we need, and it's not a bad idea all by itself, the idea that people in charge of the federal prisons might benefit from having some personal understanding of what it's like to be an inmate in a federal prison. I'm not saying that that's impossible, but I think you should serve your term, let's say, as opposed to being pardoned. I don't know whether you served enough time to really learn lessons that you could apply to other people's favor in terms of more humane treatment. But anyway, there you go. Hernandez gets released. He demands, and they give him a special tactical team to drive him to the Waldorf Astoria. And he says, hey, Captain, give me your phone, and calls the federal prison system's deputy director, I guess, and say, hey, you'll take my call because we were both been convicted of federal drug trafficking conspiracies and pardoned by Trump. We got a lot in common. The Prisons Bureau Administration rolled out the red carpet for him, said Joe Rojas, a retired prison worker and former union leader who has been speaking to the media on behalf of staff who fear reprisals for doing so since bureau leaders stopped recognizing their union last year. That's another big problem. The staff, he says, are disgusted. Renato Stabile, is it Stabile? S-T-A-B-I-L-E. Stabiles, everyone. Renato Stabile, maybe. The court-appointed lawyer representing Hernandez, because surely someone who traffics 400 tons of cocaine into the United States doesn't have access to a private lawyer or private funds, and it may not, having been kidnapped from his own state and locked up for 4 years. Anyway, he's been representing Hernandez, and he has long maintained his innocence, and we're talking about Hernandez's innocence. You got to wonder sometimes. Maybe Renato Stabile himself has been convicted of drug trafficking and been pardoned by Donald Trump. I don't know. But in this case, he's maintaining Hernandez's innocence, which is what a defense lawyer will do. He said his client's treatment was appropriate, because why not? It would be particularly cruel, he said, to grant somebody a pardon and then have them released from prison only to have them immediately shipped back to a place like Honduras where they would have immediately arrested him or he would have been killed on sight. And I think they mean S-I-G-H-T, but it says S-I-T-E. But he would also, if you kill him, there will be a site where it happens. but killed on sight by criminal elements that wanted to do him harm, Stabile told ProPublica. Through his attorney, Hernandez declined to comment. Okay, so Hernandez himself has nothing to say, but yeah, his lawyer outlines the case that every deportee makes. The reason I'm here is I fear that I'll be killed in my home country, but you're sending me back nonetheless. ICE referred all questions to the White House, which responded with a link to a November social media post announcing the president's intent to pardon Hernandez. Now, what are you going to do with him after you pardon him? I refer you to my post where I said I was going to pardon him. That's not an answer. Axios could say why it matters. Because it wasn't an answer. Okay, yeah. Or because people like answers. Smith didn't respond to an emailed request for comment. A BOP, Bureau of Prisons, spokesperson said in an emailed statement that the Bureau does not discuss conditions of confinement or security procedures and that employee standards of conduct prohibit staff from giving any prisoners preferential treatment. Violators may be subject to disciplinary actions, including removal from federal service and criminal prosecution, the statement said, which tells you nothing. I mean, first of all, we don't even know what they mean by saying, employee standards of conduct prohibit staff from giving any prisoners preferential treatment vis-a-vis others pardoned by the president and for whom the president has ordered the red carpet treatment. It's just that there are no others who were released under those orders. Or it may mean if you blab about what happened, we will prosecute you for violating the code of conduct here that says you're not supposed to give anybody preferential treatment. You did. So you're in trouble. But the president ordered me to. I don't think so. Maybe that's how you keep people in line. The investigation had ultimately ensnared Hernandez, stretched across several U.S. presidencies. Despite looming legal trouble stateside and widespread allegations of corruption in his country, Hernandez, often known by his initials, I haven't seen that, but JOH, in case you were wondering, was seen as a key U.S. ally under the Obama and first Trump administrations, ostensibly because of his apparent willingness to help tackle drug trafficking and migration issues. So you wouldn't, look over here. Look what I'm doing with this hand so that you don't see what I'm doing with this hand. Pretty classic ploy, hiding in plain sight. For instance, you might do this if you were part of an international pedophile ring. You might support QAnon to make people believe that you couldn't possibly be involved with it because the contradiction would be too much to bear. Oh well. In 2012, as president of Honduras National Congress, Hernandez, famously pushed through a legal change allowing for the extradition of accused criminals to the U.S., a reform that his attorney pointed out was ironically later used to extradite him. But in 2018, less than halfway through Hernandez's second term as president, the Drug Enforcement Administration arrested his younger brother, former Honduran Congressman Tony Hernandez, in Miami for a series of weapon and drug trafficking charges. A jury found him guilty, the way it normally works, the following year at a Manhattan federal trial in which Emil Bove, the federal prosecutor who would later become Trump's personal defense lawyer, gave a closing argument replete with allegations implicating the Honduran president himself in criminal schemes. Bove could not be reached for comment, interestingly enough. Although the sprawling criminal case focused on narco-trafficking concerns, Juan Orlando Hernandez's political career was fraught in other ways. Dana Frank, a University of California, Santa Cruz history professor who studies Honduras, described him as a repressive criminal on multiple fronts. While in Congress in 2012, he led a technical coup in overthrowing the Supreme Court, she said. Then he ran for re-election to the presidency in 2017 in complete violation of the Constitution, she said. Amid the resulting protests, security forces shot and killed at least 16 people, including 2 children, among other human rights abuses, a United Nations report found, so they'll be abolishing the United Nations as well. Hernandez has said little publicly, but his government told the UN it would look into those cases. His party has tweeted that it has an unwavering commitment to democracy and freedom. That's nice. Weeks after Hernandez left office in 2022, he was arrested at his home in Honduras and extradited to the U.S. to face drug trafficking and weapons charges. Prosecutors said he funded his political career with millions of dollars he received from violent drug trafficking organizations in exchange for allowing them to move mountains of cocaine out of the country. Stabile told ProPublica the case against his client was always a weak one, relying heavily on the word of unreliable drug traffickers, as is frequently the case, with outlandish stories and little in the way of hard evidence. Still, the government's case was enough to convince a jury to convict Hernandez after just over 8 hours of deliberation, and in June of 2024 he was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. Afterwards, Stabile and his client began working on an appeal, which at that point appeared to be Hernandez's only shot at freedom. Early last year, prison officials transferred Hernandez out of the federal detention center in Brooklyn, which largely holds pretrial detainees, and sent him to the high-security Hazleton Penitentiary in West Virginia. I mean, I thought they might be talking about Hazleton, Pennsylvania, but I think it's maybe Hazleton. The L and the E are reversed, although for all I know, I forget what the pronunciation of the Pennsylvania version is. It may also be Hazleton, despite how it's spelled. Or I may be forgetting how it's spelled entirely. Anyway, sent to West Virginia. Dubbed Misery Mountain. Yikes. Not the mountains of cocaine. Those are Misery Mountains as well. But this federal penitentiary in West Virginia is Misery Mountain. The notoriously violent prison is the same facility where mob boss James Whitey Bulger was beaten to death in his cell hours after his arrival in 2018. Yet, prison sources said Hernandez seemed to do his time quietly, eventually landing in the coveted housing unit set aside for a therapeutic program used to treat drug addiction, mental illness, and, quote, criminal thinking errors. I really don't know what that's supposed to mean. Sounds a little 1984-ish, but there you have it. But after Trump returned to office last year, a much quicker route to freedom suddenly seemed possible: a pardon. Like Trump, Hernandez was a member of his country's right-wing party, and like Trump, he believed he'd been targeted by leftist forces. He also had other reasons to be hopeful. During his time in office, Hernandez had championed the creation of special economic zones that could set their own taxes and regulations, a move that benefited the Trump-aligned Silicon Valley titans who invested in them, including Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen. But the law was repealed by his successor, center-left party Libre member, Xiomara Castro. I hope I've got something like the correct pronunciation there. It's Xiomara. Anyway, putting plans for the zones that everybody wanted to invest in jeopardy, Anderson responded to a request for comment with a link to a social media post disavowing any involvement in the pardon. Thiel couldn't be reached for comment, though he had previously said he wasn't involved either. Longtime political operative Roger Stone also suggested in a blog post co-authored with conservative activist Shane Trejo, he's the first one I haven't heard of here, in January of 2025, that pardoning Hernandez could have political benefits for Trump. In the post, Trejo and Stone, who was pardoned by Trump 5 years ago after he was convicted of obstructing a congressional investigation into Russia election interference, urged the president to, quote, crush socialism and save a freedom city in Honduras with a well-timed pardon that could be the final death blow to Xiomara Castro in the 2025 elections. Eventually, Stone took on a more direct role in advocating for clemency when he gave Trump a 4-page letter Hernandez had written to the U.S. president asking for a pardon, and making the case that his conviction was a political persecution by the Biden administration. In a text with ProPublica, Stone said he had received the letter from a journalist who'd gotten it from the family. He emphasized repeatedly that he was not compensated for his involvement. I read the letter, did my own research, and elected to send the letter to President Trump, Stone wrote. I actually had no contact with JOH or anyone in his family until after the pardon. On November 28th, 2 days before the Honduran presidential election, Trump announced his intent to pardon Hernandez, as if to influence the outcome of the election, one might guess. Stabile said he didn't learn the news until Ana Garcia Carillas, the former president's wife, called him in tears. He's letting him out. Trump's pardoning Juan Orlando. She sent Stabile a screenshot from Truth Social, because she believed it. It's an iffy proposition, but she did, where Trump had written that he would grant him a full and complete pardon. The decision was met with bipartisan backlash from lawmakers. Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat from Virginia, called the unexpected reprieve disgusting and incomprehensible, whereas Senator Thom Tillis, a North Carolina Republican, described it as horrible optics. In his post, Trump also urged Hondurans to vote for the National Party candidate Nasri Tito Asfura, who was trailing in multiple polls, adding what to observers of Latin American politics was a thinly veiled threat. If Asfura did not win, Trump said the U.S. would, quote, not be throwing good money after bad in support of Honduras. The message was obvious. Experts said that pardon was a clear green light for the National Party to manipulate the vote. One former high-ranking U.S. diplomat told ProPublica, in the end, Asfura narrowly edged out center-right candidate Salvador Nasralla and handily defeated the incumbent Libre Party, but the count was plagued by delays. Oh no, not irregularities. Reports of voter intimidation, we'll never have those here, and allegations of fraud, another problem we'll never experience. And Nasralla later formally challenged the outcome. On December 1st, while the votes were still being counted in Honduras, Trump posted again on Truth Social in support of Asfura. Looks like Honduras is trying to change the results of their presidential election. If they do, there will be hell to pay. The former president's pardon officially went through that same day, that evening in Hazleton. After prisoners had already been fed dinner, corrections officers showed up at the housing unit to get Hernandez. Smith, the Bureau's deputy director, wanted to speak with him. The newly pardoned inmate was escorted to the captain's office, where he used the captain's phone to talk to Smith, his fellow pardon recipient, according to a source familiar with the situation. The move shocked current and former prison staff. Hernandez was also allowed to talk with his family, who then phoned Stabile and told him the good news. Within the hour, Stabile said he got a call from Smith inquiring about the release plan. I'm in Manhattan, and he's in West Virginia, Stabile told Smith. It would take me 6 hours to come pick him up. Can you transport him? Oh, no, not 6 hours. Because most inmate releases are done during the daytime, prison staff had to be called back in to handle the paperwork and logistics of freeing an inmate. But there was a problem. Hernandez had an immigration hold. When non-citizens are convicted of crimes in the U.S., immigration officials routinely sign detainers asking prisons and jails to turn them over to ICE for possible deportation proceedings following their release date. In Hernandez's case, records show immigration agents sent the prison notice of a detainer in February of 2025, 2 months after he was sentenced in court. For several hours on the night of his release, prison officials scrambled to get the detainer removed so he could walk free, according to several sources familiar with the situation. It's definitely special treatment. That's not normally the way it goes. And it sounds like they might even have wanted to say it this way. That was Lena Graber, not the screaming, but the statement. A senior staff attorney at the Immigration Legal Resource Center. Most people with drug convictions would never get their ICE detainer removed just because the conviction was pardoned. Records show immigration officials lifted the detainer on Hernandez just after 11 p.m., so everyone's working overtime here. Typically, according to a source familiar with the situation, prisoners who are released from Hazleton when there's inclement weather or when it's too late in the day to catch a plane or a bus home are put up at the Microtel Inn and Suites at the bottom of the hill. It's a 2-star hotel where a room costs $69 per night. Nice. In the morning, they're given a ticket and sent on their way. But for Hernandez, prison officials activated a 4-man tactical team, paying at least 3 of them anyway, overtime. That's interesting. What happened to the last guy? To drive him to the luxury hotel in Manhattan. According to government records and law enforcement sources, a standard room there costs more than $1,000 a night. Stabile declined to comment on where Hernandez stayed, but said the government did not pay for it. Okay. Oh, whew, at least we didn't get ripped off. It was another move that stunned prison bureau staff. One official called it absolutely effing nuts, although they didn't say effing. They said the real word, adding, I don't even think that's ever been done, not just for a pardoned inmate, but for anyone who's been released. Another agreed it was unprecedented. Usually they get a, we'll say, crappy bus ride or a cheap plane ticket. They don't get the carpet rolled out for them. As of now, the former president's whereabouts are unknown. A few days after his release, Hernandez said in Spanish in a social media post that he had, quote, no intention of returning to Honduras immediately anyway, because he and his family would be in grave danger given the evident persecution and weaponization of justice against me. If Hernandez is in the U.S., and we're saying that even that is an if he is in the U.S., it's unclear what his immigration status is. Meanwhile, Honduran officials have issued a warrant for Hernandez's arrest over years-old fraud allegations, and in a social media post asked Interpol and other international allies to honor it. But a law enforcement official familiar with the situation told ProPublica there is currently no pending Interpol red notice asking for law enforcement to detain him. And if there was, well, we'd probably still say that there wasn't one. The only request the network received to issue such a notice, the official said, was declined while Hernandez was still in prison. So really, just totally inexplicable. There ends the story. We move on after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp dollar bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Right, we got to the end of the JOH story, and we learned that we're supposed to call him JOH anyway. Juan Orlando Hernandez, whereabouts unknown. Not important, though, because he's only a drug kingpin. Anyway, I just found that interesting. I also wanted to make mention of the fact that I don't know whether we said it on the air, but with respect to the Texas voting that began yesterday, I have already seen in circulation one TikTok video, or at least TikTok-style video, from a woman voting there who arrived at the polls entirely prepared with all forms of ID so that there would be no effery going on there that would prevent her from getting her ballot. And you'll never guess what happened. First of all, this is a black woman, so you'll never guess what happened. She arrived at the polls to cast her vote on the first day of early voting in the Democratic primary. Well, I don't know what primary. She didn't say, actually. We're not sure about this. But given what ended up happening, I think it's probably a reasonable assumption that authorities in Texas thought, at least the authorities thought, she was going to be voting in the Democratic primary, or was likely to anyway. And she arrived. She didn't have her license with her. It was in the car for some reason, although I wouldn't leave things in the car necessarily. But she knew that that was not necessarily going to be sufficient to establish both her identity and her citizenship. She had her passport with her, even though the SAVE Act has not made it through the Senate, and it is said it is unlikely to. Although Trump insists that they would be using its standards for establishing citizenship and eligibility, regardless whether it's passed by Congress or not, as you know. and for insanely stupid reasons. But anyway, she arrived with everything that she needed to cast her vote, but instead found they used another excuse. It's not so much that we just are going to dishonor your identification, though we'll do that too if it comes to it. But instead, the news was that she had been purged from and removed from the voter rolls. You're not registered, ma'am. To which, of course, she said, how could that possibly be? Or, well, in more colorful language, I would guess. That can't possibly be true. I voted in the 2024 presidential election. I've never missed an election. I vote every time there's an election. Of course I'm registered. But of course, they probably did pull some trick to purge her name from and expunge it from the rolls. Or maybe they just lied in total bad faith. No one knows. So she produced the passport and everything. And they said, actually, we don't need the passport. We need the driver's license. So she went, and no problem, I've got that. I don't know whether they made her produce the passport or not, but it didn't matter because they said it doesn't matter whether we can establish your identity or not. There's no voter registration record for us to pull. Well, she wasn't having it, which is the correct response to all of this, and fought on in order to get a provisional ballot handed to her. I'm a little worried about that. The tradition is not. Traditionally, the provisional ballots don't get treated all that well. Although when I mentioned this to Greg, he says, well, that's changed over the years as ballot handling procedures and ballot counting methodology and ballot validation procedures have improved. And it may very well be the case that she gets a chance to appear in a courtroom if her provisional ballot is challenged and with plenty of advance notice. I'm sure she's the kind of person who would show up and fight for that, for the right to have that counted. Although, again, another thing Greg pointed out is this was a vote in a Democratic primary. I don't know that Republicans are going to spend that much time or effort trying to invalidate a provisional ballot in a Democratic primary. They would be more concerned with one in a general election. Though it's also probably worth pointing out this would be ample practice for pulling the same stunt in the general election. I just wanted to bring it up to point out, I guess maybe in a concession to those who insist that the scheme that Trump threatens, having ICE at the polls to disrupt the vote, even if they don't have the personnel or the various other reasons why you might be inclined not to believe that that's a real and executable plan, even if Trump really does intend to try to execute it, he won't be able to. It's worth pointing out that there was zero ICE presence, reportedly, at least as far as we know, at the polls in Texas yesterday, and yet voting was at least, briefly, in the Kavanaugh stop sense, briefly disrupted for this one woman, although she spent who knows how many hours trying to get her hands on a provisional ballot. All I'm saying is that in Trump's vision of how voting goes in the Trumpian future, it's all happening on one day, election day only, in person, and every person who meets even a bad faith objection to their casting a ballot will spend the bulk of that day in court trying to get their right to a provisional ballot validated, as opposed to their right to the ballot they were really entitled to before they were illegally purged from the voter rolls. And the more people you do that with, the more disruption there is. And it doesn't really even have to be particularly effective. Like, I guess if you're trying to plot your way, this can't work because there's no way they're going to be able to challenge enough votes in some of these heavily Democratic districts to change the outcome of the vote. It's possible that that's the case. I just wanted to point out this thing doesn't have to really even be effective in that sense. Like, if there are, if you can, will you be able in any place to invalidate enough Democratic votes to change the outcome in that precinct or statewide or what have you? The cumulative result, of course, is what everybody's interested in. And I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that it wouldn't necessarily, in Trump world, require changing the outcome of the election in order for them to claim that there were voting irregularities, quote unquote, of any sort. I mean, all it really takes is enough ICE goons, if that's what you need to see in order to believe that this is a real plan. And there's no telling who ICE goons are anymore. Right? The question of whether or not there are enough of them working for ICE to do this nationally. One, we don't really know. Two, they're surging their recruitment as we speak. And three, you don't actually have to be an ICE goon to make people think you're an ICE goon. We've recognized that fact already. We know that since there's no uniform, all you have to do is show up in, something that looks remotely like Army surplus and insist you're ICE or the police or federal officers or what have you. And people have to pause and ponder whether or not you're full of it. And that's kind of all it really takes. But in addition to that, if all you really need to do is produce somewhere between, 5 and a dozen viral videos of what purports to be federal officers making what purport to be credible accusations of voter fraud, for MAGA America, anyway, to believe that this is happening everywhere. Remember, they told MAGA America that Minneapolis burned to the ground several years ago. I don't know where they think this footage of ICE surge in Minneapolis is coming from, given that the city was destroyed in 2020. But, logic doesn't enter into it is the real issue here. And the fact that they're not going to be, the fact that logic dictates that logistically, not logically, but logistically, they're not going to be able to prevent enough votes from being cast doesn't interest them. It was never part of the plan. The plan was to create a few incidents and point to it and generalize from there and say there was irregularities in one precinct in one congressional district in Texas, which would be all it would take for them to say that congressional district's results are questionable, which again in Trump world is probably also grounds for, in their mind, to say the results statewide in Texas are questionable. In fact, forget the state, all the states. Something happened in a backwater somewhere, and so therefore it could have happened anywhere, and that will be the claim. They'll expand on it there. They don't need to actually have, don't take out a pencil and paper and tell me, well, if it takes, let's say, half a dozen ICE agents at each of these locations in order to affect this kind of intimidation, and it has to be done in shifts because voting goes on all day, and there's early voting, and there's several days where there simply aren't the personnel to do it. The personnel don't have to be there. They only have to be where the cameras are. And then they just claim, it's probably happening everywhere. So I don't know. I don't know that proving that they don't have the personnel gets you all that far in all of this. And again, logic will make no difference. As we were pointing out when we were reading the article from, was it Mark Elias had written it up, the story of what might be behind these latest claims that Trump is making, that I'll issue an executive order, whether the Congress approves of these new voter restrictions or not. We're going to have them in place for the midterms period because I know something that you don't know, and it turns out that it's someone found a secret copy of the Constitution, but only in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that gives the president ultimate power to basically do whatever he wants, but in this case specifically to do the thing I said I was going to do. Well, if that makes logical sense to you, then I think you're probably not worried about the head count over at ICE. I don't think that's really your top issue in affecting your voter suppression schemes. Okay, so we'll move on from there to another of our related subjects. Let's see, what might we be interested in sharing with you? You probably wouldn't be surprised to know about this NBC News piece headlined, Noem's use of Coast Guard resources strains her relationship with the military branch, sources say. I only bring it up because I saw it circulated yesterday as the source of one other detail of Blanketgate, I guess, which we have to call it. I really was fascinated because it was such a dumb story. How did this thing really go down? How do you end up trying to fire your Coast Guard pilot because a blanket wasn't moved. It's almost assuredly not the pilot's job to move that blanket anyway. But we were told that they tried to fire this Coast Guard pilot, which who knows why should you be able to fire a Coast Guard pilot at all, especially if you're Corey Lewandowski and you don't actually have a job in the administration at all. You just are, in a relationship with someone who is in the government, but who also probably shouldn't really be able to dismiss Coast Guard personnel at will. But we were told that they tried to do it in the middle of their trip and then ended up having to rehire the person, at least temporarily. And then I think they never went back and redismissed them or even tried. But they had to rehire them because they were flying somewhere and they needed to get home. And the only person presumably who could fly this plane home was this guy. So, all right, fine. But it was actually dumber than that. Apparently, this NBC News piece, written up by Gordon Lubold, Courtney Kube, Kube, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Jonathan Allen and Julia Ainsley. Together, this is the source of another angle on this story, that apparently the blanket was discovered missing en route to wherever they were going. And I think we learned earlier they were going someplace, but there were mechanical problems with the planes. They switched planes and forgot the blanket. I can understand how that would happen. They take off. Oh my God, we don't have the blanket. At which point, here's what you do. You get on the phone or whatever, and you call wherever it was the other plane ended up and say, listen, there's a blanket that's important to the secretary. It's a personal item. It's probably still on the plane. I don't know whether it's still there or whatever, but send somebody to go collect this thing and call me when you got it. I mean, she really wants to have it. She's furious that she doesn't have it. So what I want is somebody collect this thing and put it on a flight. Follow us. Bring the blanket where we're going. If you're the DHS secretary, you can order these things. But instead, they apparently ordered the pilot of the plane, turn around, go back, stop the flight, turn around, go back, get the blanket, then we'll continue on to where we're going. Now, it was reported here, I didn't read the whole story yet, it was reported the pilot refuses, which is probably the correct answer for a number of reasons. And you can imagine what some of them might be. One, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Coast Guard pilot, so I have a little bit of experience with this, and I've flown the DHS secretary around. I just want to point out that, like, a spur-of-the-moment decision in the air by the pilot to turn a VIP's military escort plane back around is going to be frowned upon. Like, air traffic control people are going to be upset about that. DHS people are going to be upset about that. Military commanders, my Coast Guard superiors are going to be upset about that. Why did you take a VIP U-turn in all this? Well, I was ordered to by the VIP. That might be a fine explanation, but what does it do to air traffic? What does it do to people around you? What does it do to the schedule? What does it do to security in the intended destination who are on hand waiting for the secretary to show up but now have to stand there an extra couple of hours because of the blanket? All sorts of things, right? And then they try to fire him midair. If you won't turn around, you're fired, which is, of course, even dumber. It's one thing to land and say you're fired. All right, but how are you getting back home? It's another to say, well, you're fired. Oh, well, who's landing this plane then? Well, obviously you're not fired now, but as soon as you land, you're fired. Now turn around. This is just not conducive to getting the job done, especially when you can, in fact, order someone else to just pick up the blanket and fly it to you. Or FedEx it, for God's sake, like a normal person would do. It would be expensive. It's a weighted blanket. But that's what you're supposed to be doing. I don't know, in the world, in life, these are the solutions. But the dog shooter has a different set of solutions in mind, obviously. She doesn't think like the rest of us. So anyway, I thought I would bring that to your attention. I'll just go from memory on that one rather than reading you the story, but I'll include it in the links that I give to Scott, who I hope is feeling better today. Apparently sick yesterday and still pulled out the bulk of the summary for us. So thanks very much, Scott, for hanging in there. And if you're falling asleep because you're drowsy, because you're not feeling well, Scott! I would say wake up. We need you. Thank you very much for being there for us, even in times of illness. All right, other things that I thought I might share with you before heading back in another direction. From ballsandstrikes.org, the folks cover, another of the fine group of folks we have out there covering things in the federal courts and the justice system at large. Federal judges can barely conceal their disgust for the Trump administration's lawlessness. I mean, it's a good thing that they can't contain it. It's, of course, a bad thing that they either have to have any barely concealed disgust for the Trump administration's lawlessness in the first place, and that they feel so restrained in expressing it. But when federal judges are appending Bible verses to their signature blocks, it is claimed here by way of subheader, that is generally a sign that democracy is not in a good place. I don't know that I would have reached that same conclusion, but I would have said something extraordinary is happening here. Madiba K. Denny is our writer. The piece published yesterday at ballsandstrikes.org. And let's get the insight. Last year, the Trump administration sent over 100 Venezuelan migrants to an infamous prison labor camp in El Salvador without giving them any opportunity to challenge the legal basis of their removal, in direct violation of a court order that barred the government from doing so. I wonder what the judge in that case thought of that. Oh, well, it's Judge James Boasberg, of course. So you who have been listening to the show for a long time know that he said something about it to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and that we ought to be watching out for this because it's becoming a habit. And by the way, over the weekend report that I stashed away and didn't read, somebody has tallied this up. Apparently 4,400 plus was the number that they settled on in the headline. 4,400 times the Trump administration has been ordered to do something with respect to these immigration cases and has instead opted not to do that thing, but to do their own thing. So it's becoming more than just a habit. Anyway, on Thursday, Federal District Court Judge James Boasberg issued a new directive ordering the Trump administration to, quote, facilitate the return, unquote, of any of those migrants who are now in third countries, meaning neither the U.S. nor Venezuela, who want to come back to the United States and contest the legal grounds for their deportation. Boasberg emphasized that he didn't reach this conclusion lightly, and had even offered the Trump administration the opportunity to propose alternative steps to ensure that migrants receive the legal hearings to which the Constitution entitles them. But after the government essentially told the court to pound sand, he said, and that's a quote, he concluded that returning the migrants would be, quote, more productive. Boasberg, who in 2023 became the chief judge of the Federal District Court for Washington, D.C., has been a frequent target of political attacks by the White House and its allies, up to and including calls to remove him from the bench. This judge, like many, is Trump? Yeah, it's posted on Truth Social, but this judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached! 3 exclamation points. Posted by Trump on social media in March of 2025 in response to some of Boasberg's earlier orders in the Venezuelan migrants case. That same day, 24 House Republicans co-sponsored articles of impeachment against Boasberg, claiming that he violated his judicial oath of office by prioritizing, quote, political gain over his, quote, duty of impartiality. And last month, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing exploring impeachment as a tool for holding, quote, rogue judges like Boasberg accountable. Chief Justice John Roberts put out a rare statement in March of 2025, noting that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. But the Trump administration doesn't appear to have given Roberts' words any meaningful consideration. Oh, he's an important judge, too, as it turns out. On Tuesday, for instance, Bloomberg reported that senior officials in the Justice Department asked the nation's federal prosecutors to provide examples of, quote, judicial activism from rogue judges that would allow the administration to make impeachment referrals to Congress. On Wednesday, at a congressional hearing, Attorney General Pam Bondi lambasted liberal activist judges for their coordinated judicial opposition. In USA Today, the White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson said it was appalling that clearly biased lower courts were trying to push their unlawful policy agendas rather than let Trump implement the agenda he was elected on. Increasingly, the administration is characterizing judges who rule against them as partisan activists, making rulings based on bias and spite rather than impartiality and respect for the law. There is a simpler, less conspiratorial explanation. Judges across the political spectrum keep condemning the Trump administration as lawless because, can you guess? Because the Trump administration keeps brazenly breaking the law. In immigration-related cases alone, hundreds of federal judges who were appointed by every president since Ronald Reagan have issued thousands of orders against the Trump administration. At least 44 of those judges to rule against the administration in mass detention cases were appointed by Trump himself. Can we say that again so for clarity? 44 of the judges that keep ruling against him, his own appointments. On Thursday, for example, Judge Nancy Brasel, B-R-A-1-S-E-L, whom Trump appointed to Minnesota's federal district court in 2018, granted a temporary restraining order blocking the administration from whisking non-citizen detainees out of state before they can even talk to a lawyer. The Constitution does not permit the government to arrest thousands of individuals and then disregard their constitutional rights because it would be too challenging to honor those rights, said Brasel. What they're doing there, of course, is arresting people in Minnesota and then flying them as soon as possible to Texas, where the Fifth Circuit Court rulings obtain, because the Fifth Circuit Court has inexplicably come to the conclusion that there's no habeas corpus available to detainees held in the Fifth Circuit. But Minnesota isn't in the Fifth Circuit. So what they do is fly people there as quickly as possible and then say, sure, if you think the federal Constitution guarantees you at least the attempt to file a habeas corpus petition, you can try it, but you need to do it in the district you're in and according to the rules of that district. And in that district, you don't have that right. At least not until the Supreme Court reminds us, oh yeah, right, actually that's in the federal Constitution. You do have that right. They haven't done that yet, so there you go. The Constitution does not permit the government to arrest thousands of individuals and then disregard their constitutional rights because it was too challenging to honor their rights. Even though Republicans won on TV defending this practice and others like, well, why do we have to get a judicial warrant to break into people's houses and arrest them for immigration crimes? That would be really, really tough to do. That's the point, but so what? Anyway, another Republican-appointed judge issued another ruling against the Trump administration on Thursday, too. This one arising out of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's attempt to censure Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, the retired naval officer. You know that story. In November of 2025, Kelly appeared in a video reminding members of the military that they have an obligation to disobey illegal orders. So Hegseth tried to reduce his retirement rank and pay. Federal District Court Judge Richard Leon, who was appointed by President George W. Bush in 2002, determined that Hegseth's actions were making veterans afraid to exercise their First Amendment rights and concluded that that was, quote, a troubling development in a free country, ! Leon also stated that our retired veterans deserve more respect from their government and our Constitution demands they receive it. The order includes 14 ! By the way, including one exasperated horse feathers. My goodness, horse feathers. Oh my gosh, we need a censoring horn for that one. The most stunning federal judicial rebuke of the Trump administration to date is likely the recent order directing the government to release Liam Ramos, the 5-year-old boy in the bunny hat, whom the Trump administration shipped from Minneapolis to a detention center in Dilley, Texas, 2 weeks ago, Federal District Court Judge Fred Beery, or Byrie, I'm not sure which, B-I-E-R-Y, chastised the administration for traumatizing children and criticized its indulgence of a perfidious, we learned about perfidy, perfidious lust for unbridled power and the imposition of cruelty. Beery, who was appointed by President Bill Clinton in 1994, also cited 2 Bible verses, Matthew chapter 19, verse 14, and John 11:35. They are respectively, Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them." Give them habeas corpus, for that matter. "For the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." And, respectively, of course, Jesus wept. Longtime federal judges are literally declaring that the Trump administration is an affront to the laws of man and God alike. In the administration's imagination, such rulings are evidence of a biased judiciary. In reality, what the administration perceives as open hostility from judges is an objective response to open authoritarianism. Well, thank you again to our author, Madiba K. Denny. Not to be mistaken for any other Madiba Denny, I guess. But if you want that initial in there, you put it there, we'll read it. That's our obligation. All right. That brings us to the end of the road for today. I'm just sort of scanning to see, did I park that story about it? Yeah, here it is. There was a Reuters story under the headline of "Courts have ruled 4,400 times that ICE jailed people illegally. It hasn't stopped." So Judge Boasberg appears to have a point in that respect. Lots of other things for us to catch up on. We need the rest of the week to do it. Tomorrow we'll be back along with Greg Dworkin, who was instructed in no uncertain terms to go away and come back tomorrow. Same goes for me now. Time, though, for Justice Putnam to take over the Netroots radio airwaves with his Wednesday programming. What's up at the top of the list? Trump DOJ lawyers are quitting and posting about leaving their jobs on LinkedIn as the mass exodus continues. Elsewhere on the menu for today, Mark Zuckerberg, set to testify for the first time in front of a jury in a watershed social media trial. Minnesota and federal authorities are separately investigating what caused the 8 skull fractures that landed a Mexican citizen in the intensive care unit of the hospital. And Warren Buffett's company invests in the New York Times
From
6 years
radio.com.
after he sold all his newspapers. What could that be about?
Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Plenty more from around the world, of course. Peru's Congress voted to remove interim President Jose Carri from office. Wow, everybody's doing it. As he faces corruption allegations. And Paris prosecutors opened 2 new investigations into sex abuse crimes and financial wrongdoings linked to, you'll never guess who. Say it with me, Jeffrey Epstein. See you tomorrow.